The blue sun of Kelvani cast long shadows across the broken remains of what was once a beautiful city. Smoke rose from countless fires, while the sound of distant explosions echoed through the empty streets. Ambassador Yun Tae-woo stood at the window of the Alien Council chamber and watched another transport ship flee into the dark sky above. The war had been going on for 3 years now, and the Alien Republic was losing badly. These peaceful, blue-skinned people had never been fighters, and their enemies knew it well. The Vorthak Empire had come from the Outer Rim, with ships that blocked out the stars and weapons that turned entire worlds into dust. Yoon turned away from the window as footsteps approached behind him. Council Leader Vellani walked slowly across, the marble floor that was now cracked in many places from recent bombing attacks. Her normally bright blue skin looked pale and tired. "Ambassador Yoon, we have received word from our last stronghold on SciFiPrime," Vellani said in her soft voice that seemed to shake with each word. "The Vorthak will begin their final attack in 6 days. Our military leaders say we cannot hold for more than 2 days once they start." Yoon felt his heart grow heavy as he looked at this brave leader who had tried so hard to protect her people. The alien had been good friends to humanity ever since first contact 20 years ago. They had shared their knowledge of medicine and art while humans had helped them build better communication systems between their worlds. "What about your fleet?" Yoon asked, even though he already knew the answer. Vellani shook her head slowly. "We have less than 50 ships left that can still fight. The Vorthak have over 2,000 warships in this system alone. They have been playing with us like a cat plays with a mouse." The truth was hard to hear, but Yoon had seen the battle reports. The Vorthak were not just winning because they had more ships. They were cruel and enjoyed making their enemies suffer before the final blow. They had destroyed hospitals and schools first, then forced the alien civilians to watch as their defenders were picked apart piece by piece. "We have sent out distress calls to every known civilization in this part of the galaxy," Vellani continued. "Most are too far away to help in time. Others are too afraid of the Vorthak to risk their own ships." Yoon walked to the long table where star charts were spread out, showing the current positions of both fleets. Red markers showed Vorthak positions like drops of blood across the map, while blue markers for alien ships were scattered and few. "What? About the message you sent to Earth?" he asked. "It will take 12 days for that signal to reach human space, even at quantum speeds," Vellani replied. "Then more time for your people to decide what to do. The war will be over long before any help could arrive." Yoon studied the charts more carefully. The Vorthak had positioned their fleet in a perfect formation that would let them attack from all sides at once. Their massive dreadnought ships were twice the size of anything the alien had ever built. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "Tell me about their tactics," Yoon said. Vellani touched a control pad and the chart changed to show previous battle recordings. They always used the same plan. "First they send in smaller ships to test our defenses. Then the big ships move forward in straight lines while fighter craft attack from above and below. They never change this pattern." Yoon watched the recordings play out. The Vorthak fought like they were following an old book of rules that never changed. Their ships moved slowly and predictably. They relied on heavy armor and big guns rather than speed or clever moves. "They must have some weakness," he said. "If they do, we have not found it," Vellani answered. "Our weapons barely scratch their hull plating. Their shields can absorb anything we throw at them. Even when we manage to destroy one of their ships, 10 more take its place." A young alien officer rushed into the chamber carrying a data pad. "Council Leader, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral Lee Dae-ho of the Terran Federation Navy." Yoon felt his pulse quicken. Admiral Lee was one of the most respected commanders in human space. If anyone had been sent to help, it would be him. "Put it through," Vellani said. The air above the table shimmered and formed the image of a stern-faced, human man in a dark blue uniform. Admiral Lee Dae-ho had gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Behind him, Yoon could see the bridge of a human warship with crew members working at their stations. Council Leader Vellani, Ambassador Yoon, Admiral Lee said with a slight bow of his head. I am transmitting from the edge of your system. My fleet received your distress call, and we have come to offer assistance. Vellani's eyes grew wide with hope. Admiral, how many ships do you have? 47 vessels, including my flagship, Lee replied. The hope in Vellani's eyes faded quickly. Admiral, with respect, the Vorthak have over 2,000 ships. Your 47 ships, while brave, cannot change the outcome of this war. Admiral Lee smiled in a way that made Yoon remember why humans had become known across the galaxy for their stubborn refusal to give up. Council Leader, you may not know much about human military doctrine. We do not always win by having more ships. Captain Park So-jin appeared beside Admiral Lee on the transmission. She was younger than the Admiral, with short black hair and quick movements that suggested she was always thinking several steps ahead. We have been studying Vorthak battle tactics for the past 6 hours, Captain Park said. They fight like machines following a program. This gives us certain advantages. What kind of advantages? Yoon asked. The kind that make 47 human ships worth more than 2,000 alien ones, Admiral Lee answered. We will need detailed information about their fleet positions and timing for their final attack. Vellani looked confused. Admiral, I do not understand. Even if you had the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, the numbers are simply too great. Lieutenant Choi Min-ho stepped into view behind the captain. He was holding a data pad and speaking quickly to someone off-screen. Admiral, we are picking up massive Vorthak fleet movements. It looks like they are preparing to begin their final assault ahead of schedule. Admiral Lee's expression grew serious. How long do we have? Based on their current speed and formation changes, they will reach optimal attack position in 18 hours, Captain Park reported. That gives us enough time, Lee said. Council, Leader Vellani, I need you to pull back all your remaining ships to defensive positions around your homeworld. Do not engage the enemy under any circumstances until you receive word from me. But, Admiral, if we retreat now, trust me, Lee interrupted gently. Human beings have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have learned a few things about how to win against impossible odds. The transmission ended, and the chamber fell silent. Vellani looked at Yoon with questions in her eyes. Do you really think 47 ships can defeat 2,000? She asked. Yoon thought about everything he knew of human military history. Humans had always found ways to win battles they should have lost. They used speed instead of strength, cleverness instead of numbers, and they never gave up even when defeat seemed certain. I think, Yoon said slowly, that the Vorthak are about to learn why humans are called the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Far out in space, Admiral Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet prepare for battle. 47 ships against 2,000 seemed like madness to most species. But humans had always been a little mad when it came to protecting their friends. The real fight was about to begin. Admiral Lee Dae-ho stood in the center of his command bridge, watching the tactical display show thousands of red dots moving through space like a swarm of angry insects. Each dot represented a Vorthak warship heading toward the last alien stronghold. The sight would have terrified most military commanders, but Lee had seen worse odds before. Captain Park, report on enemy fleet composition, he said without taking his eyes off the display. Captain Park So-jin moved to his side, carrying a data tablet filled with information her team had gathered over the past 12 hours. 2,000. And 43 vessels confirmed, Admiral. The fleet consists of 800 heavy dreadnoughts, 600 cruisers, 400 destroyers, and the rest are fighter carriers and support ships. Dr. Han Ji-young looked up from her science station where she had been analyzing scans of Vorthak technology. Their ships are impressive in terms of raw firepower and armor thickness, but they appear to use very old design principles. Heavy plating, basic energy shields, and projectile weapons that move in straight lines. Like someone built warships using thousand-year-old plans, observed Lieutenant Choi Min-ho from his position at the communications console. Lee nodded slowly. The Vorthak Empire was old and had been using the same tactics for so long that they had forgotten how to adapt. This was exactly the kind of enemy that human forces excelled at defeating. What about their command structure? Lee asked. Highly centralized, Captain Park replied. All orders come from their flagship, a massive vessel that appears to be 3 times larger than our biggest ship. If we could disrupt their command system, the rest of their fleet would likely fall into confusion. Commander Kim Hae-won entered the bridge from the fighter bay, where she had been inspecting her squadrons. Admiral, my pilots are ready for deployment. We have 96 fighters spread across 12 carriers. Each fighter is equipped with the new adaptive AI targeting systems. Lee smiled slightly at the mention of the AI systems. Human military technology had advanced rapidly in recent years, especially in areas that required quick thinking and fast reactions. The adaptive AI could learn enemy movement patterns in real time and adjust tactics accordingly. Colonel Bay, what is the status of our Marine units? Lee asked. Colonel Bay Sung-min stepped forward from where he had been reviewing boarding plans with his officers. 3,000 Marines ready for deployment, Admiral. We have practiced boarding actions against ships similar to Vorthak designs. Their vessels appear to have thick armor but relatively simple internal layouts. Engineer Oh Da-eun looked up from her weapons control station with excitement in her eyes. Admiral, all weapon systems are operating at full capacity. The gravitational pulse cannons are charged and ready. The Vorthak have never encountered weapons like these before. Lee walked to the front of the bridge where the main view screen showed the distant glow of stars being blocked by the massive enemy fleet. Show me their attack formation. The display changed to reveal how the Vorthak ships had arranged themselves for their final assault. They moved in perfect geometric patterns with the largest ships in front and smaller vessels supporting from behind. It looked impressive, but Lee could see the weaknesses immediately. They move like they are in a parade, Captain Park observed. No variation in speed, no unpredictable movements, no flexibility if something goes wrong. Exactly, Lee agreed. They have been winning wars for so long against weaker enemies that they have forgotten what real combat looks like. Dr. Han, what can you tell me about their reaction times? Dr. Han Ji-young consulted her readings. Based on their fleet movements over the past day, it takes approximately 45 seconds for orders to travel from their command ship to their outer formations. Their ships then require another 30 seconds to begin executing new commands. Over a minute to respond to changing situations, Lee mused. In human naval doctrine, a minute is long enough to lose an entire battle. Major Lim Kyung-soo had been operating stealth reconnaissance probes to get closer looks at the enemy fleet. Admiral, I have detailed scans of their flagship. It is heavily defended, but appears to have a critical weakness. All their communication arrays are concentrated in one section of the ship. Lee studied the scans that appeared on his display. The Vorthak flagship was enormous, easily large enough to carry 50,000 crew members. But like all their technology, it was built using old ideas that prioritized size and strength over efficiency and adaptability. If we could take out their communications, Captain Park said thoughtfully, their entire fleet would be cut off from Central Command. The question is how to get close enough, Colonel Bay added. That flagship is surrounded by hundreds of escort vessels. Engineer Oh Da-eun smiled as she pulled up technical specifications for their newest weapons. The gravitational pulse cannons do not travel in straight lines like normal weapons. They bend space around themselves and can strike targets even when they are hidden behind other objects. Commander Kim Hae-won nodded approvingly. My fighters could create a distraction while the main fleet targets their command center. Vorthak. Fighter pilots are skilled, but they have never faced opponents who can think and adapt as quickly as human pilots. Lee brought up a three-dimensional model of the battle space and began moving pieces around like a chess master planning several moves ahead. The key will be speed and coordination. We need to hit them faster than they can react and harder than they expect. What about the alien forces? Lieutenant Choi asked. Should we coordinate our attack with their remaining ships? No, Lee replied firmly. The alien are brave, but they are not trained for the kind of warfare we are about to conduct. They should remain in defensive positions around their homeworld. Our attack will be so fast and violent that friendly forces in the area would only get in our way. Captain Park began working on detailed tactical plans. We could use our quantum jump drives to appear directly in the middle of their formation. It would give us the element of surprise, but also put us in the most dangerous position possible. Dangerous for them, Lee corrected. Human ships are designed to fight at close range, where our superior maneuverability and faster weapons can be most effective. Vorthak ships are built for long-range bombardment of static targets. Dr. Han Ji-young had been analyzing more data about Vorthak technology. Admiral, their shields appear to be tuned specifically to stop energy weapons and physical projectiles. They may not be effective against our newer weapon types. Engineer Oda-un grinned widely. The phase cannons will go right through their shields as if they do not exist. The nanobotic repair systems will keep our ships fighting even after taking heavy damage. And the quantum mines can appear anywhere in space without warning. Lee felt the familiar sensation that came before a difficult battle. It was a mixture of anticipation, concern for his crew, and absolute determination to protect innocent people from those who would harm them. The alien were peaceful beings who had never hurt anyone. The Vorthak were bullies who enjoyed causing pain and suffering. All department heads, prepare your final battle plans, Lee ordered. We jump into combat in 6 hours. Make sure every member of your teams understands what we are about to attempt. Major Lim Kyung-soo raised his hand. Admiral, what should we tell the crew about our chances of success? Lee looked around the bridge at the faces of his officers. These men and women had followed him through many dangerous missions over the years. They trusted his judgment even when the odds seemed impossible. Tell them the truth, Lee said simply. We are 47 ships facing 2,000 enemies. By all logical calculations, we should lose this battle quickly and completely. He paused and smiled in a way that reminded everyone why they had chosen to serve under his command. Then tell them that human beings have never been very good at following logical calculations when our friends are in danger. Tell them that we are about to show this galaxy what happens when someone threatens people under our protection. The bridge crew began moving with renewed purpose as they prepared for battle. In 6 hours, they would either save the alien republic or die trying. For humans, that was not really a choice at all. Supreme Commander Vextar stood on the command deck of his massive flagship and watched with satisfaction as his fleet moved into final attack position. The bridge around him was filled with the sounds of efficient military activity as thousands of crew members prepared for what would be the last battle of this war. The alien republic had fought bravely for 3 years, but now only one world remained under their control. Vextar had taken his time with this conquest, enjoying the slow process of breaking his enemy's spirit before delivering the final blow. It was more satisfying than simply destroying them quickly. Report on enemy positions, he commanded in his deep voice that echoed through the bridge. Sub-Commander Krelvon consulted his tactical display. The remaining alien forces have pulled back to defensive positions around their homeworld. We count 46 ships of various sizes, all heavily damaged from previous engagements. Vextar nodded with approval. The alien had finally learned that resistance was futile. They were making their last stand around their most precious world, exactly as he had planned. It would make their final defeat even more dramatic. What about those human ships that appeared at the edge of the system? He asked. 47 vessels holding position near the outer asteroid belt, Krelvan replied. They have made no aggressive moves and have not responded to our warning signals. Intelligence suggests they are here as observers only. Vextar felt a moment of curiosity about these humans. The Vorthak Empire had heard stories about this new species, but had never encountered them directly. Some reports claimed they were dangerous fighters, but Vextar found that hard to believe. Any species that could only send 47 ships to a major battle was clearly not a serious military threat. Keep monitoring them, but do not consider them a priority, he ordered. 47 ships cannot affect the outcome of this battle. War Master Torghall approached from the weapons control section. Supreme Commander, all dreadnoughts report ready for final bombardment. We can begin the attack on your command. Vextar looked out at the massive fleet under his control. 2,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level entire cities. Together, they represented the unstoppable might of the Vorthak Empire. Begin Phase 1, he commanded. Across the fleet, hundreds of smaller ships broke formation and accelerated toward the alien defensive line. This was standard Vorthak doctrine, tested and proven through countless victories. The advanced scouts would probe enemy defenses and draw out their remaining weapons. Then the heavy ships would move forward and finish what remained. Major Lim Kyung-soo watched the Vorthak attack begin from the stealth reconnaissance post he had established on a small asteroid. His equipment could monitor enemy communications without being detected, giving the human fleet valuable intelligence about enemy plans and intentions. Admiral Lee, the Vorthak are starting their final assault, he reported through secure quantum communication. First wave consists of approximately 400 light cruisers and destroyers. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Lee studied the tactical display showing both the Vorthak advance and the alien response. What is the enemy's timeline for this attack? Based on their current speed and formation, they will reach the alien defensive line in 3 hours, Captain Park, Sojin reported. If they follow their usual pattern, the heavy ships will begin their bombardment 2 hours after that. Dr. Han Ji-young looked up from her analysis station. Admiral, I am detecting massive energy buildups in the Vorthak dreadnoughts. They are preparing their main weapons for sustained bombardment. Lee nodded grimly. The Vorthak planned to take their time with this final battle, slowly grinding down the alien defenses while making sure the defenders could see exactly what was coming. It was psychological warfare designed to break enemy morale before the shooting even started. Commander Kim, are your fighters ready for immediate deployment? Lee asked. Commander Kim Hae-won confirmed from the fighter bay. All squadrons are prepared, Admiral. Pilots are in their cockpits, and launch systems are armed, Engineer Oh Da-eun reported from her weapons station. All ship systems operating at maximum efficiency. The gravitational pulse cannons are fully charged and the quantum mine deployment systems are ready. Colonel Bae Sung-min had positioned his Marines at strategic points throughout the fleet. Boarding teams are standing by, Admiral. We have studied the internal layouts of Vorthak ships and identified optimal entry points. Lee walked to the main view screen where he could see the distant flashes of light that marked the beginning of the battle. The alien were fighting hard, but they were clearly outmatched. Their weapons barely scratched the advancing Vorthak ships while enemy fire tore through their defensive formations. Captain Nam, report from the destroyer squadrons, Lee ordered. Captain Nam Ho-seok commanded the fastest ships in the human fleet. All destroyers ready for high-speed attack runs, Admiral. We have practiced the maneuvers extensively and can execute them on your command. The battle between the alien and the Vorthak advance force was reaching its climax. Alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes while their desperate return fire seemed to have little effect on the heavily armored enemy vessels. It was exactly what everyone had expected. Supreme Commander Vexitar watched the destruction with professional satisfaction. Advance force has broken through the outer defensive line. Alien casualties are heavy and their remaining ships are falling back toward their homeworld. Shall we begin Phase 2? War Master Torghal asked. Yes, signal the main fleet to move forward, Vextar commanded. We will finish this in the traditional way. The massive Vorthak dreadnoughts began their slow advance toward the inner system. These enormous ships moved like floating mountains, their thick armor plating able to withstand anything the alien could throw at them. Each dreadnought carried enough firepower to destroy a moon, and they advanced in perfect formation that had been used successfully for over 1,000 years. Admiral Lee watched the enemy fleet movement and felt the familiar calm that came before. Decisive action. All ships, prepare for quantum jump insertion. We go in fast and hit them where they do not expect it. Lieutenant Choi Min-ho was monitoring Vorthak communications. Admiral, enemy command structure appears completely focused on the alien forces. They are not paying attention to our fleet at all. Perfect, Lee replied. The bigger they are, the less they can see what is happening around them. Captain Park Sojin had finalized the attack plan. All ships acknowledge ready status. We can execute the insertion in 30 seconds. Lee looked around his bridge at the crew that had followed him through so many dangerous missions. These men and women understood that they were about to attempt something that most military experts would consider impossible. 47 ships against 2,000 was not a battle. It was suicide. But humans had always been willing to attempt the impossible when innocent lives were at stake. All ships, execute quantum jump in 10 seconds, Lee announced to the fleet. Dr. Han Ji-young monitored the quantum drive systems. All vessels report ready for insertion. 5 seconds, Captain. Park counted down. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of ship systems operating at maximum power. Execute, Admiral Lee commanded. Reality twisted around the human fleet as 47 warships vanished from normal space and prepared to reappear in the exact center of the largest enemy fleet the galaxy had seen in generations. The Vorthak were about to learn that sometimes size and numbers were not enough. In the next few minutes, everything would change. Reality snapped back into focus as 47 human warships materialized directly in the center of the Vorthak fleet formation. The quantum jump had placed them exactly where Admiral Lee wanted them, surrounded by over 2,000 enemy vessels that had never expected an attack from inside their own ranks. Supreme Commander Vextar felt his blood turn cold as alarm signals began screaming across his flagship bridge. "What is happening?" he roared at his confused officers. "Unknown vessels have appeared inside our formation," Sub-Commander Krelvon reported with panic in his voice. 47 ships, matching the human fleet that was observing from the outer system. "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "No known technology can transport ships directly into the middle of a fleet formation." But the evidence was right there on his tactical display. Human ships had somehow jumped across millions of kilometers of space and were now sitting in the most protected area of his fleet like they belonged there. Admiral Lee stood calmly on his bridge as chaos erupted around his fleet. Vorthak ships were turning frantically to bring weapons to bear, but their massive size and slow maneuverability worked against them. They had been designed to fight enemies who approached from predictable directions, not ones who appeared out of nowhere. "All ships, execute attack pattern Alpha," Lee commanded with ice-cold precision. Captain Park So-jin coordinated the fleet response from her tactical station. "Target priorities confirmed. All vessels acknowledge and are engaging." The human attack began with a violence and speed that shocked the Vorthak into momentary paralysis. Unlike their enemies who relied on massive weapons that took time to charge and aim, human ships carried dozens of smaller weapons that could fire continuously without pause. Engineer Oh Da-un triggered the gravitational pulse cannons on the flagship. These weapons bent space itself around their targets, allowing them to strike enemy ships even when they were blocked by other vessels. The first pulse caught a Vorthak dreadnought completely by surprise, tearing through its armor like paper and causing massive internal explosions. "Direct hit on enemy dreadnought," Dr. Han Ji-young reported. Their shields had no effect against the gravitational pulse. Commander Kim Hae-won launched her fighter squadrons into the confusion surrounding the fleet. Human fighters moved like angry wasps through the massive enemy formation, their adaptive AI systems learning Vorthak defensive patterns within seconds and adjusting tactics accordingly. The Vorthak had never seen anything like these small craft. Human fighters moved in ways that seemed impossible, turning and accelerating with such precision that enemy gunners could not track them. Their weapons struck with surgical accuracy, targeting critical systems rather than simply trying to cause general damage. Fighter Squadron 1 reporting multiple enemy destroyers disabled, Commander Kim announced. The Vorthak point defense systems cannot track our attack patterns. Colonel Bae Sung-min had prepared for this moment by studying every detail of Vorthak ship construction. As enemy vessels reeled from the initial attack, his Marines launched boarding pods toward specific targets. These small craft moved too fast for the confused enemy gunners to intercept. "Boarding teams away," Colonel Bae reported. "Target, enemy, command vessels, and communication centers." The boarding pods punched through Vorthak hull armor, using shaped charges, and delivered teams of heavily armed Marines directly into enemy ship corridors. The Vorthak had never fought boarding actions against humans, and were unprepared for the speed and aggression of the attacks. Captain Nam Ho-seok led his destroyer squadron in high-speed attack runs through the enemy formation. Human destroyers were much smaller than Vorthak ships, but they moved 3 times faster and carried weapons that could strike from unexpected angles. "Destroyer squadron engaging enemy cruiser line," Captain Nam reported as his ships wove between the massive enemy vessels like racing cars in a parking lot full of trucks. The Vorthak tried to respond to the attack, but their centralized command structure worked against them. Orders from the flagship took over a minute to reach distant ships, and by then the tactical situation had changed completely. Human forces moved and adapted faster than the enemy command system could process information. Supreme Commander Vexitar watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible fleet began to fall apart around him. Human weapons were unlike anything his forces had encountered. They ignored shields, curved around armor, and struck from directions that should have been impossible. "Get me damage reports from all sectors," he commanded. "Communications are being jammed by enemy boarding teams," Krelvon replied frantically. "We have lost contact with over half our fleet." War Master Torghal tried to coordinate a response, but the human attack was too fast and too unpredictable. "Sir, our heavy weapons cannot target the enemy ships. They are moving through our formation faster than our gunners can track." Admiral Lee monitored the battle from his command center with the calm efficiency of a master craftsman. "Major Lim, report on enemy command structure." Major Lim Kyung-soo had inserted Special Forces teams onto several Vorthak command ships. "We have successfully captured 3 enemy communication centers. Their fleet coordination is breaking down rapidly. Engineer, Odayun was cycling through different weapon systems with deadly effectiveness. Quantum mines deployed throughout enemy formation. Phase cannons are cutting through their armor like it does not exist. Nanobotic repair systems are keeping our ships at full combat effectiveness despite enemy fire." The human fleet fought like a single organism, with each ship knowing exactly what the others were doing. Their coordination was so perfect that they seemed to anticipate each other's moves before they happened. This was the result of years of training and combat experience against every type of enemy the galaxy could produce. Dr. Han Ji-young monitored enemy fleet status. "Vorthak casualties are mounting rapidly. Their formation integrity has collapsed and individual ships are trying to retreat." But retreat was not possible. The human fleet had positioned itself to block all escape routes while maintaining maximum pressure on the enemy command structure. Vorthak ships that tried to flee found themselves cut off by human destroyers or disabled by fighter attacks. Commander Kim Hae-won's pilots were having the time of their lives. "Admiral, enemy fighter resistance has completely collapsed. Their pilots cannot match our maneuverability or weapons accuracy. The adaptive AI systems in human fighters had learned everything there was to know about Vorthak combat techniques within the first 60 seconds of battle. Now they were exploiting every weakness and predicting every enemy move before it happened. Colonel Bae Sung-min's Marines had seized control of multiple enemy ships. "We have captured the primary communication relay vessel, the Vorthak fleet. Command network is completely down." Without central coordination, the massive Vorthak fleet became nothing more than a collection of individual ships with no idea what their neighbors were doing. Human forces exploited this confusion ruthlessly, picking off isolated vessels while preventing any attempt to re-establish command structure. Supreme Commander Vex Tar realized with growing panic that his fleet was not just losing the battle, it was being systematically destroyed by an enemy force 1/40th its size. "All ships, emergency retreat to outer system positions," but the order never reached most of his fleet. Human Marines controlled the communication systems, and human jamming equipment blocked emergency channels. The proud Vorthak fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds was falling apart like a house of cards in a hurricane. Admiral Lee checked his tactical display and saw that the battle was proceeding exactly as planned. Time elapsed since insertion. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Enemy fleet effectiveness reduced by 70%. The impossible was happening. 47 human ships were defeating 2,000 enemy vessels through superior tactics, better technology, and the kind of coordinated teamwork that only came from years of fighting together. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn that in warfare, sometimes the smallest force could deliver the biggest surprise. The silence on the bridge of the Vorthak flagship was broken only by the sound of emergency alarms and the distant explosions of dying ships. Supreme Commander Vex Tar stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief as the numbers continued to change in favor of the human fleet. "Status report," he demanded in a voice that had lost all its earlier confidence. Sub-Commander Krelvon consulted his remaining functional displays with shaking hands. "Sir, we have lost over 1,500 ships in the past 8 minutes. The human fleet shows minimal casualties despite being outnumbered 40-1. War Master Torghall had given up trying to coordinate a defense. Supreme Commander, our remaining ships are scattered across the system with no central command. Many captains are requesting permission to surrender rather than continue this hopeless fight." Vex Tar felt the foundations of everything he believed about warfare crumbling around him. The Vorthak Empire had built its reputation on overwhelming force and unstoppable advance. No enemy had ever survived contact with a full Vorthak fleet, much less defeated one. Admiral Lee walked calmly around his bridge as reports continued to flow in from all sections of his fleet. The battle had lasted exactly 11 minutes and 43 seconds from the moment of quantum insertion to the collapse of organized Vorthak resistance. "Admiral, enemy flagship is requesting communication," Lieutenant Choi Min-ho reported from his station. "Put them through," Lee replied. The main view screen flickered and showed the interior of the Vorthak command bridge. Supreme Commander Vex Tar appeared as a tall reptilian figure with dark scales and eyes that spoke of defeat. Behind him, Vorthak officers worked frantically at damaged control stations. "Human Admiral," Vex Tar began with as much dignity as he could manage, "I am Supreme Commander Vex Tar of the Vorthak Expeditionary Force. I request terms for the surrender of my remaining vessels." Lee studied the alien commander with interest. "Supreme Commander, I am Admiral Lee Dae-ho of the Terran Federation Navy. Your request for surrender is accepted. Order all your ships to power down weapons and prepare to be boarded." "What assurances can you give regarding the treatment of my crews?" Vex Tar asked. "Vorthak personnel will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war," Lee replied. "However, you and your senior commanders will be turned over to the Alien Republic to face charges for war crimes committed during your invasion of their territory." Vex Tar nodded slowly. He had expected this outcome once defeat became certain. "I will transmit the surrender order to all remaining ships." The communication ended, and the bridge crew of the human flagship allowed themselves a moment of satisfaction. They had just accomplished something that military historians would study for generations to come. Captain Park So-jin compiled the final battle statistics. Admiral, confirmed enemy losses: 1,784 ships destroyed or disabled. Human losses: 3 fighters damaged, no ships lost, total casualties, 7 wounded, none killed. Dr. Han Ji-young shook her head in amazement. These numbers seem impossible even to me, and I helped plan this battle. Commander Kim Hai-won returned to the bridge after recovering her fighter squadrons. Admiral, enemy resistance has completely collapsed across all sectors. My pilots report Vorthak ships are surrendering faster than we can accept their submissions. Colonel Bae Sung-min had established control over dozens of captured enemy vessels. Marine boarding teams have secured all priority targets, including the enemy flagship. We have over 50,000 Vorthak prisoners in custody. Engineer Oh Da-yoon was already beginning shutdown procedures for the more exotic weapon systems. All ship systems performed flawlessly during combat operations. The new technologies exceeded all performance expectations. Admiral Lee felt a moment of quiet pride in his crew and his ships. They had faced impossible odds and won through skill, courage, and the kind of innovative thinking that made humans dangerous opponents throughout the galaxy. Signal the Alien Republic, Lee ordered. Inform them that the Vorthak threat to their homeworld has been eliminated. The message reached Council Leader Vellani within minutes. She stood in her damaged council chamber, surrounded by military advisors who had been preparing for a final desperate defense of their world. The news seemed too good to be true. Are you certain? She asked Ambassador Yoon Tae-woo, who had delivered the message personally. The Vorthak fleet has surrendered completely, Yoon confirmed. Admiral Lee is requesting permission to transfer captured war criminals to alien custody for trial. Vellani felt tears running down her blue cheeks as the reality of salvation settled into her mind. How is this possible? 47 ships against 2,000? Humans fight differently than other species, Yoon explained. We do not rely on size or numbers. We use speed, adaptability, and coordination to defeat larger forces. Major Lim Kyung-soo had remained on his asteroid observation post throughout the battle, recording everything for later analysis. Control, this is Reconnaissance Station Alpha. I have complete tactical recordings of the engagement. Request permission to transmit to Terran Command for study. The recordings would indeed be studied extensively. Military academies across human, space would use this battle as an example of perfect small unit tactics against overwhelming odds. Other species would request copies to understand how such a victory had been possible. Within hours, news of the human victory began spreading throughout the galaxy. The story seemed impossible to believe, but the evidence was undeniable. A small, human fleet had destroyed the largest Vorthak expeditionary force ever assembled. Diplomatic ships from a dozen different civilizations changed course toward human space. Everyone wanted to establish friendly relations with this species that could achieve the impossible. The balance of power in this region of the galaxy had shifted dramatically in a single afternoon. Dr. Han Ji-young began working with alien scientists to share medical and technological knowledge. Your people saved our civilization, she told them. The least we can do is help you rebuild stronger than before. Ambassador Yoon found himself busier than ever as representatives from various species requested meetings to discuss treaties and trade agreements. The Terran Federation had gone from being an unknown factor to a major galactic power in less than one day. Admiral Lee stood on the observation deck of his flagship and watched Vorthak prisoners being transferred to alien custody. These same aliens had terrorized peaceful worlds for years, but now they moved with the defeated posture of beings who had learned that cruelty was not strength. Captain Park joined him at the viewport. Admiral, we are receiving requests for military assistance from 7 different species who are currently under attack by various hostile forces. Lee nodded thoughtfully. The galaxy is a dangerous place filled with bullies who prey on peaceful civilizations. It seems we have work to do. Are you concerned about becoming too involved in galactic affairs? Captain Park asked. Lee thought about the alien children who would now grow up in freedom instead of slavery. He thought about other peaceful species who were probably facing similar threats across the galaxy. He thought about what it meant to be human in a universe where strength often determined who lived and who died. Captain, humans have always protected those who cannot protect themselves, he said finally. That is not going to change just because the scale has gotten larger. News of the victory reached Earth 3 days later, traveling at the speed of quantum communication across interstellar distances. The response was immediate and overwhelming. More fleets were prepared for deployment to this region of space. The Terran Federation was ready to take its place as a major galactic power. The Alien Republic began rebuilding their shattered worlds with human assistance and protection. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges were established, and a friendship was forged that would last for generations. But most importantly, the word spread throughout the galaxy that there was a new species willing to stand up to bullies and protect the innocent. Humans had announced their presence in the most dramatic way possible, and the galaxy would never be the same. In military academies across known space, instructors would teach future officers about the Day 47. Human ships defeated 2,000 enemy vessels in less than 12 minutes. They would study the tactics, analyze the technology, and try to understand how such a victory had been possible. The answer was simple, even if the execution was not. Humans fought not just to win, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. That made all the difference in the universe.